The hits just keep coming with the Super Number 17 arc. And by hits, I mean a sensation akin to being repeatedly punched in the face. There have been a lot of things to explore, to endure, in this tiny little arc, so much so that we are only now getting to elements that are tied to the main villain of the piece. Remember number 17? I barely mentioned him last time. I said when I started that at least there is a lot of potential in the idea of bringing back this character, turning him evil. And there is an obvious direction to seize upon, one you certainly wouldn't want to forget. That, of course, is having number 17 confront his sister, number 18. And I'm happy to say that Dragon Ball GT doesn't forget about it either. It's far more interested in devoting time to the nonsensical and pointless adventures of Frieza and Sal, but at least it gets there eventually. For a little bit. They get a scene here, divided across 2 episodes. But you know how it is, the show has to prioritize what's really important. Throughout these episodes, we've seen cutaways to Kuririn and his family's reactions to all the weird stuff going on. Some of these involve them trying to evacuate with their city, however the first one doesn't. But for some reason, Kuririn is still shown wearing a giant backpack. Does he just always go out like this? I feel like the show forgot that this isn't still the baby arc and just drew him in the same way he was drawn there. But you know what? At least his family isn't still treating him like garbage. After all, so many people come to regret that they never appreciated what they had until it was gone. Number 17 confronts number 18, trying to get her to join him. It looks like he might even have some mind control powers, which start to work. He reminds her that she's his nakama. She says that she's his nakama. They both repeat the word nakama over and over again until I become convinced this is some kind of torture scenario from A Clockwork Orange. In case you don't know, nakama means... you know what? Actually, I'm not going to get into that because apparently there are some communities out there that insist that nakama is a special word existing beyond the realm of translation and get very upset if you try to. So I'll just say that the official subtitles translated as partner in this instance, and leave it at that. The mind control comes and goes, but even when it goes, number 18 seems confused as to why number 17 is causing the destruction that he is. Even Kuririn is able to figure out pretty easily that number 17 himself is being controlled. In fact, number 17 snaps back by insisting Kuririn wouldn't understand their connection to Dr. Gero-sama. Now, if you remember, number 17, using an honorific for Dr. Gero, is literally the same thing number 18 picked up on in the Cell arc. Because of that experience, she immediately does again. Nope, sorry. She doesn't notice that at all. Kuririn does. As what Kuririn is saying is causing number 17 to think difficult questions, number 17 kills him. For those keeping score, this is the 4th time Kuririn has died. One more death and he gets a free Snapple. This is an emotional scene, and Ito Miki does a great job expressing her character's grief. It's probably the meatiest scene number 18 ever has. Give Kuririn back stands right up there with Goku's own "Are you talking about Kuririn?" as far as I'm concerned. While number 18 is ready to die to avenge Kuririn, she ultimately tanks a blast to save her daughter. Number 17 flies off, number 18 has just enough strength to clasp hands with Kuririn before passing out. So, this is good. Remember how Tambourine killed Kuririn and how that motivated Goku's actions throughout the Piccolo arc? Now, our protagonist here has received her motivation, and she is going to get to the bottom of this whole evil plan. I just disappointed myself. I almost believed me for a second. Nope, that's not happening. I hope you enjoyed that scene because this is the last we see of number 18 until the tail end. What part of Goku time don't you understand? So yeah, this is sad stuff for the sake of sad stuff. Well, it's also to help set up the ending in the next big storyline, but that's not any better. This is the closest the Super Number 17 arc comes to actually being about anything, and it still comes across like an item on a checklist that needs to be ticked off. This story throttles any and all attempts to draw personal connections among the people involved. It's nothing but good guys and bad guys fighting because world is at stake. And a huge reason why that is that despite this story ostensibly being the Super Number 17 arc, Number 17 is not in this story. This is not about him. From the moment we're introduced to him, he's already under Dr. Gero's and Dr. Mew's control. He's nothing more than a thing to punch. and that immediately saps any interesting potential out of this story. What's the point in bringing back number 17 if he's not going to be number 17? I rag on Dragon Ball Super a lot, and the Tournament of Power in particular, but I have to admit, when that series brought number 17 back, they actually did things with him, explored his character in new ways, showed him playing off other characters. So what I'm saying is that this is really making me appreciate Super's number 17. Not to be confused with Super number 17. Super's number 17 is good, Super number 17 is bad. Come on, this is simple. It should also be simple that if you use a character, actually use the character. Just think about it for a second. What if number 17's Nakama torture had actually worked? What role would number 18 have played in this villainy? I mean, sure, she could be another thing to punch at, I guess. Strength in numbers is a good enough strategic motivation, but it's a rather weak narrative motivation. Why is number 17 here? Is this something the doctors are making him do, or is this of his own initiative? The ending, as well as my most charitable interpretation, make me want to believe the latter, but since I never get a single insight into what number 17 wants or thinks or feels from any of this, see no sense of agency on his part, your guess is as good as mine. If this story had centered number 18's emotions, it might not have mattered. Let her perspective carry the story, and her brother essentially being gone would come across as unsettling rather than generic. Instead, the story doesn't center either of them, so there's really nothing here beyond a surface-level sadness. This isn't a character beat, it's a plot device, used to set up and pay off the ending. Let me break away for a second. Believe it or not, I really don't like being too negative in my videos. I guess I should say the longer I do this, the older I get, the less comfortable I become with the thought of bashing someone's work. I love media criticism. I love being critical. It's never enough for me to just like or dislike something. What's always been exciting for me is when it clicks in my mind precisely why I like or dislike something. And a good old-fashioned rant can be a lot of fun. But like I said when I started GT and reiterated when I got into this arc proper, I understand that these people are just doing their jobs. Not everything is a winner. Sometimes you whiff. Sometimes deadlines require something, anything, to go out there. And I always want to frame that as a constructive conversation rather than an opportunity to shame or bash. I would never want to discourage anyone watching this, or myself for that matter, from pursuing their creative endeavors out of fear they won't be good enough. It's true that I am somewhat uniquely flabbergasted by just how large a percentage of this story doesn't make sense, and I can go ahead and tell you now that that mindset is not going to be changed in this installment. Mistakes were made, and I'm going to keep pointing them out. But let me be as quick to point out my own mistakes. I made a little joke last time that if we were, for some reason, to apply the post hoc logic of Dr. Gero's son having been killed by Goku, it would be rather silly how blasé Dr. Gero's motivations are here. Well, the fact of the matter is, I got that premise wrong. Toriyama's interview says that Dr. Gero's son was killed by an enemy bullet. Apparently it was Team 4-Star's Dragon Ball Z Abridged that tied that storyline to Goku. Now, I could point out what it says when the parody version is more meaningful than that, but that would be me deflecting from my own mistake, which it is. And the funny thing is, that's a nothing part of the video, a random whimsical observation that really has nothing to do with the context of what I'm talking about. It's completely superfluous, and I probably shouldn't have written it in the first place. But this mistake was pointed out to me during the Patreon Early Access preview. I could have re-edited this before it went public. I decided not to. Let my mistakes stand for all to see and make fun of. If GT has to endure it, it's only fair that I do too. Anyway, while all the cybernetic drama has been going on, the non-jacketed clone of number 17, who the doctors call Hellfighter number 17, fights Vegeta and the others. It's not really interesting, who cares? When the original number 17 arrives, the two merge into Super number 17. And I hope you weren't expecting some amazing visuals to go with that. No, the animation is literally my opening sequence. That's it. Super number 17 looks okay. I mean, Vegeta Baby set the bar kinda low, so anything is a step up from that. I still prefer the original number 17 design, but I admit he looks slightly more intimidating this way. Granted, he'd be far more intimidating if he was actually a character I cared about, with stakes I cared about, rather than an action figure. But I won't keep prattling on about that. He looks fine. He's number 17 after doing meth for only a few months. Oh, wait, no. He's number 17 mixed with Professor Hojo from Final Fantasy VII. I'm jumping around a lot chronologically in order to group plot threads together. By this point, Goku has just defeated Frieza and Cell, but he's still trapped in hell and can only watch the ensuing beatdown on a crystal ball. He reaches out to Enma, but there's nothing he can do to get Goku out. For some reason. Enma mentions all the bad things happening, immediately after which we see a Dragon Ball crack. So maybe there is something vague, that is stopping Enma's powers in this situation. I can likewise accept that there are safeguards keeping people in hell. I mean, I would hope so, but the arc up until this point hasn't really done much to impress upon me the efficacy of hell's security. So sure, maybe Goku can't teleport out of hell back to the living world, but there are multiple means of traveling to the living world from other areas of the other world. And we've seen Goku find other methods of leaving hell. When Goku arrives in hell this time, he reminisces about having been here in the past, so we know at least one of those instances is in continuity. But, okay, we're not going to do any of that. And that's where Piccolo comes in. He reaches out to Enma from heaven, asking to be sent to hell in order to help Goku. Enma grumbles at this, saying that once he's stamped someone's judgment, he can't really undo it. Piccolo knows bureaucratic red tape when he sees it. If he can't appeal to logic, he'll appeal to pissing Enma off. He causes enough destruction in heaven that Enma banishes him to hell in a moment of rage. Cute bit, but here we are again with this show. This is a conflict in search of a motivation. It's cool seeing Piccolo make the ultimate sacrifice, again, to help Goku, again. But just like with that one, we really don't need to go through all this, do we? Let's say, for the sake of argument, that Enma, as an inscrutable god, is so tied to the mechanics of his job that he will not change his judgment. Well, dude, nobody's asking you to. Piccolo just needs to visit hell for 5 minutes. Then he'll just pop right back over to heaven. See, there's this series I watched once, you might have heard of it. It's called Dragon Ball Z. And in Dragon Ball Z, going to hell is really, really easy. In fact, there's this one time that Goku goes to hell entirely by accident. And that never requires Enma to do any tedious record keeping. It just happens. So why can't it happen here? Well, because if that happened here, then Piccolo wouldn't be able to make a noble sacrifice because that's literally the only thing this show can write for him to do. Reviewing this story reminds me of that quote, "A lie can travel halfway around the world while the truth is still putting on its shoes." None of these are lies per se, it's just a story. But I feel the principle applies here. This show can just vomit out nonsense in a matter of seconds and move on to its next bit of nonsense. Then it takes me paragraphs to explain why each one doesn't make any sense. So Piccolo arrives in hell in order to recreate the same portal thing with Dende that the two number 17s did. I've already talked about this in part 2, so I'm not going to get into it again. I will say I enjoy a couple of aspects of this. It's not uproariously funny, but Goku getting on Piccolo's nerves by constantly interrupting his concentration is pretty funny. I like Goku getting the ogres to rustle up some grub for him, and I really like how this is resolved. The problem with this plan isn't whether or not Piccolo and Dende can do this. Maybe it should be, but it isn't. It's that they can't get their timing right. Well, Goku has recently had to figure out a timing puzzle, so he passes on his wisdom. Pork bowl, tempura bowl, chicken and egg bowl. Yeah, this is a callback I actually appreciate, one that builds on a previous gag in a new way. Again, it's not great, but I'll take what I can get. So, now that Piccolo has proven that what he did in heaven was just a ruse to help Goku, Enma's going to realize the error of his ways and bring Piccolo back to heaven, right? Right? Enma? No, this is conflict without a motivation. But at least Piccolo gets to have fun keeping the denizens of hell in line. Getting back to the fight, it's not going too well. The main villain is transformed, which means that none of the other characters can keep up with him. Those characters consist of Vegeta, Gohan, Goten, Trunks, and Oob. It does not consist of number 18 because, why would you expect her to have a major role when the enemy is her twin brother? Pan is also not a major combatant, but at least she shows up. In fact, amid all the boring, pointless things that are happening, Pan actually manages to do something useful and interesting. She places Dr. Gero in a hold, while Giru threatens to blow his cybernetically enhanced brains out if he doesn't order number 17 to stand down. Now that's how you solve a problem. Teamwork makes the dream work. Or at least it would until Dr. Mew demonstrates that there is no I in team, which is perfectly fine with him. He's not about to let Dr. Gero's fear of death get in the way of his plans. In fact, he was always planning to betray Dr. Gero, believing Gero's goal of world domination was too small scale, and so programmed number 17 to only obey him. So before Giru can pull the trigger, number 17 kills Dr. Gero. This is a Last House episode, so we get another wonderful dopey sad face. Over in my Patreon Discord server, users turned sad Dinde into a reaction emoji. You all know what to do. Don't take this as a huge criticism, especially given that I'm glad there's some movement in this fight, but I just feel like this could be a bit better motivated. I like that there is dissension in the evil faction, a betrayal motivated by events on the battlefield. But it doesn't feel like that. Instead, the series goes for the lowest of the low-hanging fruit by revealing that Dr. Mew had planned this from the get-go, and this is just a convenient excuse to follow through with it. In other words, this is a betrayal simply for the evil of it. Dr. Mew is a mustache-twirling, cackling villain who will betray his own partner just because. In a storyline that is already dominated by a purely evil, motivationless villain, creating a real rift between the two doctors might have injected this with some much-needed humanity. I know I'm always going back to this, but look at the Saiyan arc. Yes, Vegeta killing Nappa is a fairly two-dimensional act that demonstrates how amoral Vegeta is right as he takes center stage in the villainy. However, there's a dynamic there that's playing out and paying off. We, the audience, learn that dynamic as the characters watching them do. They generally have a genial, playful relationship, but it becomes clear that Nappa is afraid of Vegeta. Nappa takes orders from Vegeta. Vegeta's playful banter becomes increasingly frustrated as Nappa seemingly bungles what's supposed to be a milk run of a mission. That culminates in Vegeta deciding Nappa's more trouble than he's worth and getting rid of him. It's not deep, but it is a satisfying journey to take. This just comes out of nowhere. This doesn't make Dr. Mew any more threatening or center him or fundamentally change the dynamic of the conflict. It's just a thing that happens because maybe two mad scientists is one mad scientist too many, and maybe we should just consolidate. Also, evil's gonna evil, am I right? This is one of those weird situations where less would have been more, or more would have been more. I think it could have been better if this was left as a simple strategic decision. I didn't have any plans to kill you, but now your selfish desire to live is getting in the way of my goals, so sorry, but bye-bye. That would be cold and efficient. Like with Vegeta, it would demonstrate that Mew was willing to put the mission before loyalty, without muddying the waters with a pointless, I was always going to kill you, me. But again, going in the opposite direction could work too. It always reads as disingenuous to me that Dr. Gero gets taken out first, given that he's the one who set this up in the first place. The opener positions Dr. Mew as this sad, pathetic, lonely man wandering hell, and Dr. Gero is the one who comes along, takes charge, and gives Dr. Mew a sense of purpose and agency. So there's certainly potential there for a shocking reversal, of Dr. Mew unexpectedly asserting dominance over Dr. Gero. It's just that the story never builds to that. Outside of this one scene, which can just as easily be hand-waved away as Dr. Mew being the new guy, no such dynamic exists. Dr. Gero doesn't lead or dominate in any way with their plans. The two doctors are in lockstep the entire time. They are, dare I say it, practically interchangeable, which is a problem in and of itself. That said, I can certainly understand the desire to consolidate them at this point, as two mad scientists is starting to feel like one mad scientist too many. That doesn't stop this moment from feeling like a waste of potential, though. And on top of that, given how prone this story arc is to doing nothing but reliving the franchise's greatest hits, it's hard for me not to suspect that this beat only exists so that we can see number 17 kill Dr. Gero. You know, again. If that is the case, and frankly even if it isn't, then this is once again an example of conflict without motivation. Well, as I said, it's not as bad as everything else. It's conflict with the barest minimum of motivation. Don't say I don't give credit where it's due. Anyway, Pan and Giru are able to get away from the explosion but are still close enough to be knocked out. Yeah, heaven forbid the most interesting characters in this situation get to do more than one thing before being knocked out. Vegeta's next on the chopping block. Mew comments how easy this is with Goku out of the way, which triggers Vegeta's competition boner. It makes him so mad he actually says the name Goku rather than Kakaroto, and he backtracks on his Buu arc statement, insisting that he is number one. Mew says what the audience is thinking. This whole thing has gotten old. He mocks Vegeta for being a Saiyan prince who's defending the Earth, saying he's lost his pride and must die. Vegeta's response is pretty legendary, that he's an Earthling who carries the pride of the Saiya. Frankly, that's a line that deserves to be quoted far more often than I see it happen, which is never. I never see anybody bring this up. That'd be a good line to put on an obnoxiously macho Vegeta t-shirt. Long before Super's parallel transformations, GT was setting up Vegeta as a dark mirror to Goku. See, I've always enjoyed Toei's oft-repeated Goku line, his insistence that he's an Earthling, gosh darn it. I've maintained that I find it more interesting in internal conflict than, I guess I'm just a Saiyan, fight, fight, eat, eat. But Vegeta's variation is even better. It's a no-brainer that Goku would consider himself an Earthling. It's a much bigger sign of growth that Vegeta would. But he still has to balance it against the pride he's always held dear. It's a line that signifies him taking on the best of both worlds. All that said, I can see why people don't remember this. It would be a lot more memorable if this story had anything to do with Vegeta. I'm just trying to think of a situation in GT featuring a villain with a grudge against Saiyans and a deep, intimate connection with Vegeta. I'm thinking of a story where it would feel especially pertinent or compelling for Vegeta to stand up and declare who he considers himself to be, in opposition to said villain molding him against his will. I'm conjuring a narrative that would have really benefited from Vegeta showing a little more agency. Maybe this line would have been better served in a story like that. Alas. Hey, it's better than nothing. But that's enough Vegeta focus. It's Goku time, so Goku has to rush in to save Vegeta from his impertinence. Mew is shocked to see Goku again. Goku replies that hell was cramped and he didn't like the food. Again, that's just a really good line. If nothing else, GT has some absolutely banger lines. With Goku back on Earth, we have more or less reached the final chapter of this story arc already. It's Goku and number 17 fighting until the end, and that's where we'll pick up next time. Is this fight going to be epic and amazing? Or is Goku going to be incredibly stupid? Well, I definitely didn't give that one away. Thanks for watching. Thanks for your support. Please help me out on Patreon for access to reaction emojis of really sad-looking Dragon Ball characters. I'll see you next time.